Good evening, everyone. It's really good to be here. This is my second time in this new building. I've spent hours and days and weeks and months and years in this building over my life. If you haven't met me, my name is Mark. I spent 26 years of my life in Pietermaritzburg at this church. And so I'm very grateful. It started out with my parents moving to Maritzburg, and it started out with a very key connection to Barry and Marion Hunken, who were newly married. My parents were about 15 or 20 years older than them, and they invited our family, 2 parents, 5 kids, to their connect group, and the rest is history. So I'm very grateful. I just wanted to start out. I saw Bobby Neft. Are you here? There we go. During worship, I saw Bobby with his hands in the air. I just wanted to say to you, heaven's open over you, Bobby. And you represent a whole sector of this community, retired people. Bobby was my headmaster in grade 6. He lashed me. How's that? It was when corporal punishment was still around. And I can pronounce a blessing from afar. I'm too terrified to talk to you close up. How's that? But I'm saying that over you, Bobby, but also on behalf of those that are retired. Heaven is open over you tonight. And God's got big plans for those that are retired in the physical. I'm absolutely convinced that moving people into open homes is possible. And I'll tell you why I say that is because the psyche of the world says that actually we have a bit of free time on the weekend, but actually the midweek is jammed up. It's really difficult to change people's routine, to get them into the home. But I'm absolutely convinced that it is God's plan and it is possible to get people into homes. This is one of the maxims that I live by. It comes straight out the Bible. It says there's nothing new under the sun. We can kid ourselves that ancient civilizations had a whole lot more time. But I'd like to declare today, it's even more convenient to get to homes these days because we've got cars and we've got technology and. It doesn't take a day's trip on a horse to get to the next house. So I want to break that over us today. It's very possible to move people into homes. Busyness is not our ultimate enemy. COVID lockdown has shown us that people's need for community is far higher than the curse of busyness. When we started in Durban 6 years ago, we started planting that site by planting connect groups, and they filled up quickly. And regularly, we would have more people in our connect groups than on a Sunday in our corporate meetings. And that was wonderful. And over the first few years, we had very high percentages of people in connect groups versus our Sunday meetings. What happened during COVID and into lockdown is that data began to change. And as we surfaced toward the end of last year, we saw very quickly that our numbers had dropped to maybe close to 50% of people in connect groups. And why was that? Possibly because of fatigue, possibly because of just the hardship, the hardness of lockdown. Some people had just retreated because of the comfort of home, but those were the stats. And so we, knowing that we believe in this house-to-house revival that God wants to do, we knew that we had to make some adjustments. And what we were going to do, I want to talk a little bit about the how. How do we do connect groups? And some of this we've been preaching for many years, but some of this we stumbled across toward the end of last year coming out of lockdown. You may remember we preached a series called Mountain Messages, yes? We had a look at the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. It was 10 weeks worth of content, a wonderful preaching series. But what we did is we looked at this juncture saying, this is a wonderful moment to get the church on board toward a new preaching series. As we do, people get excited for new. But there's a wonderful moment to couple that with some new connect groups. Now, those would be new connect groups that are starting for the first time, new leaders. Some of the connect groups that we had, they were old and fatigued and leaders needed some new life, etc. A reset was needed. And so we began to gather together. There were many visitors that came out of lockdown. we wanted to integrate them in. There were many that were disconnected. We just had a look at who was around, and we began to place them into groupings. We found very quickly that there were some leaders that were around and keen and available, and we learned some lessons out of these new groups that we planted. And I'd like to share just 4 things that we learned. It's going to be quick, but I trust that it will inspire you and also give you some practical how-to. The first lesson that we learned is that new preaching series are the perfect launch pad for new groups. It's like a trampoline. As a pastor, an elder, a leader gets up on the stage and says, hey, we're starting a new series. It's a wonderful moment to engage the crowd and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't need to just be receiving the message, but actually we're going to work it out in the midweek. You can air your views. You can agree. You can disagree. You can chew on the cud. It's all your opinions are, they count. It can happen in a home. And so we began to look at this. The thing that happens when we launch these new groups, it keeps things focused. We're preaching the same message Sundays and in our connect groups. And so it feels like for people that are really wanting to mature in their faith, how do you mature? You mature by constantly using it, by nudging it along, by chewing it over, by getting your opinions out, discussing it. That's how maturity takes place. The other thing that happens is for visitors that are looking in, is it gives them something to hold on to. They know what's coming. They're able to engage with the content, and they know they're prepared for when they walk through the doors of your Connect group. I'd like to say that on the 30th of Jan, that's next week Sunday, not this Sunday, we're starting a new series. How exciting. It's called Life of Faith. It's through the book of Romans. It's going to run for a number of weeks. But what we learned, and I'll get to this in a moment, but this Life of Faith series that we're going to be launching, it's a perfect moment to gather people together, to reset your group if it's lost a bit of traction, to aim people towards something. Now, this is what you get within your Connect group. If you're uncertain, you've never known this, you get given 3 tools every week that you can use. I'm suggesting that you mix it up, you look at the creativity of how you use it, but these are the 3 tools. Number 1, you get given for your Connect group a media, video, 10-minute segment that you can play. What is that covering? Well, let's just say the topic is faith on a Sunday, on that Tuesday or Wednesday or Friday when you have a Connect group, you'll have a 10-minute little message from a pastor that covers, or a leader that covers the topic of faith from another angle that you can play in your Connect group, or you can get some notes from. We don't want it to be long, but it lays a track as to the topic. The second thing that you get given is a booklet. Now that booklet, people use in different ways. Those that are very studious, they like to take notes, they color code their things, etc. They will tend to bring their book to every Connect group. And as they're listening to the video, they will fill in the blanks, and that's the way that they'll learn. Not everyone will use it, but it's a wonderful tool to just keep it working on the inside. The third thing that you'll be given, is you would have heard it mentioned, is Connect Group Prep. Now, what is Connect Group Prep? It's a bunch of questions that differ from introductory, open-ended questions to some really deep questions. They allow people to engage with the topic. It's a wonderful way to work through the topic at hand. The second thing that I want to say is that the first step, this is what we learned, the first step must be valuable and manageable. For leaders that are starting out, if the first step toward leadership is untenable, in other words, the step is too big, what happens? You tear your pants. It's not pleasant. It needs to be valuable and manageable. Think about new people that have never walked into a new environment. The courage that it takes to arrive at a new home and see the cars outside, or the non-cars outside because they arrive early and the people arrive late. It's terrifying. And so the steps need to be manageable. Imagine a school says to you, hey, listen, there's a general educational meeting on that weekend. You all are invited. It's for 3 days and it costs 500 Rand. Who's signing up for that? There's no appeal there. Why? Because it's just general. There's no information. It costs a lot of time and it costs a lot of money. It's very different to the parent memo that gets sent out that says, hey, there's a grade 5 meeting on Thursday night for 1 hour. no cost, come along, it's at the school. That lands for me because I've got a grade five kid. It's manageable and it's valuable. What we learned in launching groups is make the step manageable. We launched 6-week connect groups. Even though it was a 10-week series, 6 weeks. Leaders were putting their hands up saying, I can do 6 weeks. You know what happens after 6 weeks? The group galvanizes and the leaders say, hey, that wasn't too bad. We'll need to do another 6 weeks. You know what happens with visitors and people that don't really like connect groups? You say, hey, why don't you join the 6-week group that's going to study the Bible just for 6 weeks? I guess I can give it a try. In the process, community happens. People build relationships and the rest is history. I spoke to one leader, and I'm ending now. I spoke to one leader and he said to me after the first 6 weeks, he says, I've closed down my connect group. And I was disappointed because I really wanted after the first 6 weeks for him to carry on. And then with a twinkle in his eye, he said, I've said to my group that we're going to start up for the next preaching series. And that's exactly how it can roll, preaching series to preaching series. The third thing I want to say is we learned to set up a leadership team as opposed to one leader. It's possible in 6 weeks, if you've got a leadership team, to say, hey, I'm not going to do it every single week, but to facilitate the questions, if there's 3 people, I'm going to do it twice, you're going to do it twice, she's going to do it twice. It's manageable, that, and it gets people engaged. This is the kicker, is that if there's 3 or 4 people that are in the leadership core, you've got a critical mass that's going to attend. Genius. Number 4. And lastly, connecting people requires skill. I truly believe that. Connecting people requires skill. It's not just herding sheep. The skill that's required is not leaning on corporate announcements alone. I found that corporate announcements, 2 people sign up for a connect group. It brings it to the surface. But what allows people to pour into our homes is individual invitations. And I'd like to charge us to look this year. Look for people that are disconnected. Invite them. Get them into your home. There's power. Thank you.